headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Good morning, Julian.
We've got so much to talk about in relation to Ukraine. First of all, can we just talk about these evacuation corridors? Thankfully, 5,000 people were able to flee Sumy in the northeast of the country along an evacuation corridor yesterday. There were some reports of some shelling, but not the sort of bombardment that we've seen of other so-called humanitarian corridors by the Russians after they've agreed ceasefires. We're told more have been opened in the last hour. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol and other towns and cities. Hoping to get people out of the country. Are we doing enough to help those Ukrainians trying to flee the country and those who have left the country already?
Well, the first thing is I think we should stop thanking Russia for not bombing people. The answer to the humanitarian corridors and the humanitarian crisis is for Russia to stop their invasion and to stop their death and destruction that they're raining down on Ukraine. So I think we at every point we need to make that very clear that this is entirely Putin's fault. And I think the other thing to say about the humanitarian crisis is that the world showed tremendous resolve and acted tremendously in a tremendously unified way when dealing with the sanctions, to the point where it has had unprecedented success in putting pressure on the Russian regime. We need to do the same on the humanitarian crisis. And another thing to remember is that these people are not economic migrants. They want to return home, and the likelihood, therefore, is that most of them will want to stay close to the border. They'll want to stay in Slovakia and Poland, where I'm going later today, and in Hungary and Romania, because they will want to return to their homes as soon as they can, back to their families, back to their communities. And that means that there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on these countries, and we will have to help them. We will have to increase our humanitarian aid. We'll need to give them the assistance they require, rather than our primary focus being on taking people. But where we do have to take people, I think we have to make sure that the systems are as easy as possible for them to be able to reach family and friends, for example, where they have them in the UK or other European countries.
Well, indeed. And with the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has confirmed today that 762 visas have now been granted, some 22,000 applications now being processed. But there's been a lot of confusion and, frankly, accusations even from Tory backbenchers that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has misled Parliament when she said that there are staff in Calais, she said on Monday, and no refugees have been turned back, and then saying there was a visa centre en route to Calais. People were actually told a formal notice outside the centre in Calais to go to Brussels or Paris to make their applications. Now, then a centre was set up in Lille, some 70-odd miles away from Calais, about 110 kilometres. I mean, there's no doubt at all we are putting a lot more hurdles in place than other European countries are doing for Ukrainian refugees.
Well, first of all, knowing Priti Patel, I doubt very much if she will ever have knowingly misled Parliament. I don't think she is remotely of that character.
So she must have been lied to by her civil servants. I mean, it's happened to Home Secretaries before.
Well, I wouldn't comment on that, but I would comment on the character of the Home Secretary, which I think is impeccable. But I think it is necessary that we look at any of the processes we put in place, excuse me, to ensure that we make it as easy as possible for these refugees, given that we must have some security checks, to reach their families where they want. But I think the bigger problem, the one we should be focusing on, are the pressures on these governments of these European countries to be able to absorb very, very big numbers. We're talking about, being able to absorb maybe, tens of thousands in the UK, but there are millions crossing that border who will want to stay in Poland, who will want to stay in Slovakia. The Disasters Emergency Committee in the UK is doing a great deal to help. They're coordinating our country's biggest charities actions. There are lots of people in the UK want to help. That's the proper place to go. It's dec.org.uk if people want to donate or help or make offers of help to the charities.
But again, these people need a home. I mean, should we be offering more places? We're looking at, of course, Poland's going to be taking, 1 million people there on the doorstep. There's strong links between Ukraine and Poland. But we've seen countries like Ireland, like Norway, just far afield as Britain is from Ukraine. They're taking people in their early, small thousands, whereas we've only taken in the hundreds. Should we be taking more people in sooner?
Yes, as I said, I think we should be making it easier. We should be making it as easy as everybody else.
OK. Let's also talk about what has been happening in terms of these sanctions. The US have gone ahead with an immediate oil and gas import ban from Russia. The UK going to ban by the end of the year. The EU cutting their oil and gas supplies from Russia by 2/3, they say, by the end of the year. A much taller order for Russia, for Europe, particularly when they've so reliant 40% of their gas, 30% of their oil, whereas we in the US were looking single-digit numbers. How significant a move is that in terms of sanctions?
Well, of course, we have sanctioned the Russian central bank, and that really impacts on their ability to defend their currency and to keep their economic stability afloat. The money that Russia has in its central reserves and its foreign exchange reserves have come from the sales of oil and gas, mainly to Europe. If we can reduce that income, that hits him even further. It means that not only can he not use the reserves he's got, he can't build up further reserves. That's a major problem for countries like Germany, which is much higher than the EU average, about 65% of its gas coming from Russia. As you say, about 40% for the EU overall, but only 3% for the UK. So it is a much easier thing for us to do. One of the things that we could be doing, in my view, is to increase North Sea gas production. We have gas. It's much greener than the alternatives, which would be to, for example, import liquefied natural gas from the Gulf. But liquefied natural gas has twice the CO2 content, effectively, as North Sea gas. So we could be both greener and more independent by producing more from the North Sea.
And indeed, reaping the benefits of the shale gas, the natural shale gas that's sitting underneath our ground right now. We have enough to supply all of our gas needs and to be able to export and supply Germany's gas needs as well. It's insane.
But not quickly. But we could increase North Sea gas. The Americans, of course, could increase. And I think that we should be looking to our allies around the world to increase production at the present time. First of all, to ensure security of supply, but B, to keep the pressure on the price down.
But where are those allies? Where are those OPEC allies? OPEC has still agreed to stick to the same level of oil production. Well, you know, the hit, not just on Russia is going to be huge, obviously, but the hit on around the world. We've just been discussing this on the show, that, you know, the hit on not just our energy prices, transportation, the hit on every single commodity that we purchase, the hit indeed even on global crop supplies. The hit is going to be huge in every Western economy, and particularly also in many developing countries where we could end up seeing mass political destabilisation. This is the time we should be going to our OPEC allies, you know, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. Where are they? What are they doing?
Well, I'm not in a position to tell you what discussions are being held.
By all accounts, Saudi Arabia and UAE aren't even taking calls from Joe Biden.
Well, I can't comment on what is happening or what the British government is doing on that, but I hope that we're encouraging others to increase that production. That is what they can do in the global fight against the Putin regime. It has to be a global battle because in today's world, all our finances are so interconnected. The global financial system is very, very interdependent. We can actually cripple the Russian economy if we all stand together on it.
And what do you make of this offer from the Polish government to basically donate all of their MiG fighter jets to the US forces in Germany, for them to then hand them over to the Ukrainian forces? Now, this offer of these MiG jets was already in play, you know, a week ago, and then it didn't happen. The Americans have now said that's not going to, for want of a better phrase, that's not going to fly for us. There's big concern from NATO. They don't want to be seen to be basically going into an all-out confrontation directly with Russia. But why can we not donate MiG fighter jets to from Poland to the Ukrainians? Is that any different to the anti-tank missiles that we're supplying? It's still a weapon of war, isn't it?
I'm not sure whether there are any particular legal reasons why that can't happen. It seems to me that it's a similar situation as one you described. Countries have a right to supply others with the means of defending themselves under international law. And I think that we should be helping the Ukrainians. As you know, I was arguing back in 2015 that was the time to be arming the Ukrainians then against the Russian threat. It's not exactly come as a surprise over a longer period. And we'll have to make sure that the Ukrainian future is properly armed. One thing I would say about this is that The Russians don't have control of the skies. There's been a lot of talk about a no-fly zone. Most of the damage to the Ukraine is coming from artillery barrages rather than from the air. And it's anti-tank and it's other weapons that we actually need to be providing them with more than they require aircraft.
Just finally, I spoke to the current Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, on the show yesterday, and I asked him, is Putin going to win or lose? And he said he's already lost. Whether it's a year or whether it's 10 years, he's going to be out of power, he believes. Do you think that's the case?
Well, victory for Putin would have been rolling through Ukraine, occupying it without resistance and installing a puppet government. So clearly he has failed in that objective. It's very difficult to see how he could invade and hold Ukraine even if he wanted to, because the Ukrainians have put up such resistance and shown such technical capabilities while the Russian logistics have been poor. So I think Putin has lost. I think the cost to his economy is catastrophic. I think the effects on the Russian people will be potentially to throw them into an era of hyperinflation. Ben Wallace, as usual, I think is absolutely right that Putin has lost, whether it's now, whether it's a few months, whether it's a longer time frame, but he's clearly lost, and sooner or later this spells the end of Putin.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Liam Foulkes, Conservative MP and former Defence Secretary.